Well, it's October again. It's Pastor Appreciation Month, and so we're celebrating today. And it's always hard after doing this for years to think of something different, something new to do to honor Jim and Nancy. And this year, the credit goes to Sally Pritchard. Recently, Beatty went up to visit Sally. I was down at the church, I can't remember, for a deacon's meeting or something. But anyway, her and Beatty were talking, and they were talking about Jim and Pastor Appreciation. And Sally said, I think it would be good if we had all the ministers that came out of Calvary Church that were once members here and went into the ministry that Jim was a mentor to. And I thought, wow, that's a great idea. So we got to thinking about it. There's actually 6, and we got to thinking about it'd be great if we could have them all here, but that would probably been next to impossible because that would have left a lot of empty pulpits. So we've got them on video, and we're here on Matt and Graywin's back porch on their deck. And it's just a beautiful place for them to sit down on this porch swing and just tell a little bit about what Jim has meant to them, how he has helped them in their Christian walk, and how he has mentored them as they went into the ministry. So that's what this video consists of, and I hope you enjoy it.
Okay. Words cannot express my feelings of gratitude to you for all the help and mentoring you have given me personally over the last several years. In 1996, when Lee and I came to Calvary Church, you helped us grow in Christ. By this I mean you were always there for us, and we really thank you for that. When the Lord Jesus Christ called us into the ministry, you were always there with answers and suggestions that helped us through the ministry at Bethel. You always had time for me when I needed to vent to someone. When I think of a pastor, and that word, the definition is really way out there, I feel that you define that word, Jim. You have time for your spouse, your children, your grandchildren, your flock, your preaching, your pastoring, and all the other responsibilities that comes along with being a pastor. You're a husband, a father, and a grandfather. And most of all, I respect you as a man of God. Now, on this Pastor Appreciation Day, honoring you and Nancy, I say this: God bless you both. And Lee and I love you both and appreciate you both very much. God bless you on this day.
As you guys know, I'm a short-winded preacher, of course, so I won't take a long time. But Jim, I just appreciate you, all you've done for me. This seems like it was the other day when I was a 20-year-old kid and you were taking me along on rides on Wednesdays and other times to go visit and do things. And now I'm a 34-year-old kid and still looking up to you. So I certainly appreciate everything you've done. It just is always an honor just to know what a father figure you have been to me spiritually, and been around from birth to now and hopefully many more years. I heard what Norm said. I have to reiterate, the Phillies fan thing's a huge character flaw. Maybe some church discipline should be brought up, just saying. But just love you, man. Hope you have another 40 years in you, and just can't wait to see what the Lord has in store for you and Calvary Church. And we're all blessed from you, ministry, your love for us, and just blessings to you.
We just thank you for the service that you've had over the years at Calvary, and want you to know how much you mean to we who are not able to be there on Sundays anymore because you sent us out to other places. But really, and when I think about all the things that transpired from the time we came. The first thought I had that you said, are there any funny stories? There's one that's really started very early on when I first moved here, and I wasn't there at the time that this story took place. But Lynn had gone to volunteer at PTA, and there were a couple other volunteers there that day. One happened to be Jim, the other was Nancy, and I think there was someone else. And Jim naturally got talking to Lynn about where you're from, and why'd you move down here, and what kind of church did you go to, and those kind of things. And Lynn would tell him where we had been, what church we belonged to, and Jim started coming up with ideas of other churches that we could try. We'd been to several and hadn't found a church that we were ready to land on. And during that discussion, I think Nancy spoke up and said, Jim, why don't you invite him to our church? And we came, and we didn't go away. And Jim is definitely like a brother. I think in some ways, I know God's hand's always been on him, and something about his ability to identify something in other people, to bring them alongside and nurture them and mentor them into the ministry, obviously is evidenced by the 6 of us who have come from Calvary. Jim's compassion for people, his desire to reach as many people as possible, his love that he expressed to me, and to my family, and everyone else in the church, and even those who weren't in the church. If he had an opportunity to reach out, he did. By watching him and seeing what he did, you learned so much. He didn't really have to tell you anything. All you had to do was watch him. And slow but sure, he got me involved in the ministry from early days of being with the choir leader for a period of time, Sunday school teacher, being on the board, being a deacon, but other things. I remember way back when Jim would take me with him, and he was going to the Sunday school convention down in Charlotte. And we went to different churches for those activities. I had an opportunity to meet others. And then I think the story goes, I don't know for sure, but I always assumed that the story was that as Jim asked me to fill in on a Sunday evening or on a Wednesday, slowly but surely, I even got up to the point of filling in on a Sunday. And then I think the way it goes is Jim said to all the other pastors in the area, if you need somebody to fill in, you might want to consider David. And that opened a wide door. Went to so many different churches, and were able to speak maybe just one Sunday. Some occasions I was sent off and spoke for over a year at some churches. I know Hickory, First Church in Hickory, I was there for over a year. At Fellowship, I was there for over a year. And this all during times when they were doing pastoral searches, or at Hickory there was an illness that I was filling in for. But what a way to be trained and to learn. I never thought, never in my whole experience that I would be in ministry. And then even as I was going to churches and filling in, I never knew that I was going to be in the ministry. And but Jim is the modern day Barnabas. He was the encourager, the mentor, the guider, and somebody that I could look up to. And even today, if I were to call Jim, my pastor, and call Jim and had a situation, he'd be right there. He'd be right there helping, and that's the beauty. So I guess in long and short, Jim, happy Pastor Appreciation Day. I hope this is a real special day for you, and I'm glad I could be a part of it. And Calvary, I love you.
We met Jim back in 1992. Todd and Jennifer had started dating that summer. And Todd was working at a camp out on the other side of Winston-Salem called the Vineyard. And we knew 4th of July he had just a day off and came over, and so we invited Jim and Nancy over, and Jennifer and Rebecca for cookout, knowing that'd be the only way we'd get to see Todd while he was home for the 4th, because we knew he'd be with Jennifer. and just really enjoyed meeting Jim and Nancy. Started going to church. We actually went Christmas Eve 1992. We were part of a home fellowship that had broken up, and we were looking for a church, and went on to the Christmas Eve service in '92, and went to Calvary from then on till 2005, when we went up to a conference just to fill in as a pastor, and then became the pastor. But Jim, I realized, had a couple of character flaws, when I met him. And Judy, you're probably thinking one of them is because he's from up north. He can't help it where he was born. But Jim told me he had a really good friend growing up that used to take him to Yankee Stadium to baseball games. And Jim had all kinds of opportunities to become a Yankee fan, but he stuck with the Red Sox and the Phillies, and to me that's two character flaws, that you just can't overlook that. When we started going to the Advent Christian Church, we knew nothing about really what Advent Christians believe. And Jim couldn't have asked for anybody to be more gracious when we'd ask questions and talk to him about some of the things that we believe, conditionalism that neither Paul or I had grown up with. And it was just a real blessing, to just watch Jim pastor. I think if you look up the word pastor in the dictionary, Jim's picture will be there. He is, God has gifted him uniquely as a pastor, and he uses those gifts and the talents God's given him really to the fullest. I know all of the other pastors in the area. Jim's raised the bar up so high. That's what we all, hope that we can do part of. One of the neat things with Jim is just to watch him interact with all ages. I don't know if he's with the seniors group because he likes going to Shatley Springs to eat, but he just the seniors love him. And as a church, Calvary, y'all are blessed with all the young couples that you have. Jim has a unique way of just making everybody feel welcome. And I was thinking about last night, just how Jim interacts with young people. And I know years ago, Jim used to do the children's sermon, and we had a benefit sitting in the choir, Mark, where we could watch the reaction of all the congregation when Jim was doing a children's sermon. And it used to be when Thomas Smith and Chase Hodges were small boys. They were 5, 6 along in there, and they'd come down for children's sermon, and you'd see their parents just kind of stand up or lean into the aisle because they didn't know what those two boys were going to do. And Jim was talking about I can't remember what his message was to the children one Sunday, but he challenged them. He asked if any of them could pick him up. And I remember Thomas Smith standing up, and Thomas stood there. Jim kind of stood in front of him, and he's like, "Okay, Thomas, let's see if you can pick me up." And Thomas just came right up between his legs, and Jim went from about 5'10" to 6'8", just stood straight up. And and Thomas really did. I think he picked him up. Don't know if Jim's feet ever left the ground, but he was climbing. He was reaching. I am so thankful to have such a special friend as Jim and Nancy and all their family. We've shared grandkids together for almost 17 years. I can't imagine not having a pastor like Jim and not having a pastoral influence like Jim and a mentor like Jim. What a blessing, Jim, you are to all of us. And I'm just honored and thankful to be part of your 40th anniversary. God bless, brother. Love you. Look forward to many, many, many more years together.
Our relationship and friendship goes back 40 plus years. That's a long time. And I never will forget the first time I met Jim. J.D. Boston and I were asked to go down to Hickory, and Jim was coming from South Carolina up to the church to candidate, for the pastorate of the church. And we were asked to go down to meet him, and we agreed to do that. We met him at Shoney's there, the old Shoney's in Hickory, and the meeting went well. But there was sort of a disaster that happened. There was a couple big glasses of iced tea that got turned upside down. They all had a nice sticky shower with iced tea. But that was okay too. That was just part of it, and we did have a good meeting and had several meetings after we talked with Jim, with the church officials and the church members. And it was we're all in agreement that this is what we felt like the church should do. Call Jim Lee. And as I look back, I know God had to be in that. Jim was always, to me, my idea of a people's pastor. One of us. Not all of them are exactly like that. But that made me think a whole lot of Jim. Still do. We had some wonderful times together. We laughed at those retreats up on the mountain, those programs.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun doing that. And yeah, we cried together a few times. And the laughter and the tears didn't separate us. It drew us closer together. I talked to Jim one time and asked him about what he thought about somebody like me entering into the ministry. And I tried to sell my side of it because I had no education, no training. Even though I'd been in church all my life, there is a difference. And Jim didn't push me. I remember him saying, well, Mom, if you're called, you'll know it. And you'll feel it. And he was exactly right. So sometime later, I went back to him and I said, Jim, I want to pursue the ministry. And that was the time we had tears. Tears of joy. And he volunteered to mentor me and help me prepare for the tests that I would be involved in and the meetings that I'd have to go through to make sure in the eyes of the officials of our denomination that this was something that was real and something I really wanted to do. And we got through all that. Jim was very patient with me, and told him that I appreciated it, but I probably didn't tell him how much I appreciated it. And I know during the early days of my ministry, problems would pop up in the church that I was at. And a time or two I'd have to stop by his house and talk to him, and he was always willing, never indicated, and I know he wasn't the kind of person that would say, you know, Bob, you'll have to come back a little later, I'm busy. You know, he always took his time for me, and that still stays with me. But he's meant a lot to me. And Calvary Church should be so thankful because they've been so blessed to have Jim Lee as their pastor for these 40 plus years. And I don't think that God's through with Jim yet. I was thinking this morning, after 40 years, his ministry is still strong. So Calvary Church, you are a blessed church.